Welcome to the Data for Action theme with this title, 5 years to go, how countries are using WASH data to drive SDG 6. My name is Muti Khema. I work with Baseflow. I am the lead for the Data for Action theme, and I would like to introduce my brother from Ghana, my brother from another mother, Mutala, to introduce himself. Over to you, Mutala.
Thanks so much, Muti. Hello, everyone, and good to have you all connect. My name is Mutala Abdelmomin, and I am a WASH monitoring and financing senior advisor with WaterAid UK, but resident in Accra, Ghana. And I am a co-lead for the Data for Action team under the Rural Water Supply Network. And we are very excited to have you this morning in Ghana and afternoon or evening, anywhere you find yourself. Thank you, and over to you, Muti.
Thank you, my brother from another mother. For those of you that is the first time, welcome. This is the Rural Water Supply Network. We are a global network of 15,000 water professionals and 90 member organizations that have come together to try to improve rural water services. And one of the ways we do that is to have webinars like this one, where we share experiences, we share lessons so that we can learn from each other to improve rural water supply services. So if you're not a member of RWSN, why aren't you? Sign up later on, and we'll show you how you can sign up through the different thematic groups that we have. But today, you are with the Data for Action thematic group, and our topic, 5 years to go, how are countries using WASH data to accelerate to SDG 6. Now, you are with us for 90 minutes, so we want this to be worth your time. As mentioned, this is the program for the day, and we, in case you're lost, you're wondering, what are we discussing today? We are discussing 5 years to go. In case you're wondering, I know there's some people who like to say, no, but it's actually 4.5, but roughly, we are almost 5 years to 2030, the end of the target end for the SDGs. And we're asking the question, how are countries doing? How are countries using WASH data to drive or accelerate to SDG 6? So we're going to discover that together today. And we have 3 wonderful speakers, a diverse pool of speakers. We have Fiona Gore, who I'll introduce a little later. We have Susie Abayado from Ghana. And we also have Dauda Kamara from Sierra Leone. A wide spectrum of experiences that they will share with us in terms of how they have used WASH data to accelerate SDG 6. So, and then after that, of course, it's not just a talk shop. You get to ask questions. So we will ask them questions, but you too can ask questions. And remember, the Q&A box, put your question there, and we might pick it during Q&A to ask the speakers. And of course, we have closing remarks. So the entire session should take about 90 minutes. And we try to run a tight ship, so we will try to stick to time. So, as mentioned, I've introduced myself and also my brother from another mother, Mutala. We are the co-leads for the Data for Action thematic group. Now, today, as mentioned, our topic is how are countries using WASH data to drive SDG 6? Now, why is this important? We are 5 years out to the end of the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal target. And countries are at different stages in terms of how they collect data, how they use data, but most importantly, how they actually act on that data, because that's the important thing. So we are going to see today, using the GLAAS framework, the GLAAS 2025 framework as a lens through which we are going to have this discussion. We are going to learn from the different countries that are here to try to understand what successes have they had, what challenges do they still have, and at what stage of their data journey are they at the moment. And that is what we're going to learn together in this session. So we're going to use the GLAAS JMP framework as a starting point to lead us into the rest of the conversation with the other speakers, who will introduce a little later on. So be assured, you will get to meet our speakers. I can sense the impatience on the chat. Don't worry, you get to meet the speakers. But before we launch into that, we wanted to do, as I think, a short survey that we would like you to actually try out at the moment. We have the surveys, about 59%, 60% of you responded. So let's see what some of the responses are so far before we jump into the session. Let's see. On the first question, oh my goodness, the majority of you are very unlikely to meet your targets. That's interesting. An even split between, oh, we have some of you that are saying that you are going to reach your targets. Congratulations, celebrate. And some, oh, sanitation looks like, generally sanitation, very few of you are going to meet sanitation, but most of you are going to meet water. Very interesting dynamic there. But generally, the majority of you are not going to meet your targets. We're going to delve into that as we go. The second question, have you used data to accelerate progress? Let's see. Yes, the majority of you regularly. That's good. Yes, regularly. Okay, so about 75% of you have used it either regularly or occasionally. Oh my goodness, I love data. This is why we love data here, because we can analyze. And yeah, it seems the majority of you have used wash data. So it's kind of interesting. If you've used it, it would be interesting to understand why is it it's not helping you accelerate? Maybe that's where we go to barriers. Let's look at the barriers. So the largest barrier, data is collected but not used for decision making. And then weak coordination and data sharing across institutions. And I think the next largest one is insufficient funding for wash monitoring. So data is not collected, coordination, funding. These are some of the findings that we've gotten, some really interesting findings here, which we will delve into as we go into the presentations. And of course, I know you're tired of listening to my voice. So I am going to introduce our first speaker for the day. Her name is Fiona Gore. And Fiona, for those of you who know her, she's a member of the family here at RWSN. So welcome back, Fiona. Fiona has led the UN Water Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water, or summarized GLAAS. And she's also worked on wash accounts at WHO and UNICEF. Now, since joining WHO over 20 years ago, she has worked extensively on building monitoring and evaluation capacity in different countries across the world. Now, she holds a PhD in public and environmental health, and I want to be open, she's got other degrees. There were too many. I had to pick one. But she's got a PhD in public and environmental health. And outside of the work and all the stuff that she's doing around strengthening monitoring systems across the world, she enjoys the outdoors. She loves the mountains. And for the life of me, I'll never understand, she loves the cold weather. I don't understand that, Fiona, but over to you anyway. Fiona Gore, our wash specialist from WHO. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you, Muti. That was the most, I'm still laughing and smiling at that introduction. But most of all, I just feel I've met my match. You love data as much as I do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Did you see that analyzing I was doing?
Hey, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. And just to let you all know, I am actually currently in the mountains. It's really foggy. And I'm really cold, and so close by, I've got my woolly hat just in case I get cold.
Okay, there you go.
But I must admit, this morning was about 6 degrees Celsius, and I thought, that's a bit cold for June. But you know what? I love the cold, and I love the mountains.
As on behalf of the Africans who have joined the call, 6 degrees is very un-African weather.
I know.
There you go.
Wonderful. But Muti, thank you for your enthusiasm. I mean, I've met my match, because people often say I'm enthusiastic and sometimes maybe a little bit too much. But I'm really pleased to be here with all of you today. I'm overwhelmed with the number of people who've joined this webinar. So thank you for your interest. Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I felt like there was a chat. Somebody said they were from Australia. Maybe I didn't see that. properly, but if somebody's here from Australia, and then I saw Colombia, and I really, as you said, Muti, I think we've got people who've joined from all over the world. So this is just fantastic. So I'm going to take the next 10 or so minutes to maybe talk to you about data. And particularly, I'm going to talk about the GLAAS and the JMP programs, joint programs by WHO and UNICEF. As you said, I work for WHO, and we have been implementing the UN Water GLAAS program on behalf of UN Water for the last, since the pilot in 2008. So maybe if we go to the next slide, I think you will all be very familiar with this diagram, and we can even click. I've got a bit of an animation there. But UN Water coordinates the monitoring and reporting of the targets and the indicators under SDG 6 through the Integrated Monitoring Initiative, what we call IMI. And this includes the WHO and UNICEF Joint Monitoring Programme for Water Supply, Sanitation and Hygiene. I will call it the JMP after that, but namely that monitors 6.1, 6.2, but also WHO is monitoring 6.3.1. And then we have GLAAS, so the UN Water Global Analysis and Assessment of Sanitation and Drinking Water, jointly now coordinated for this last cycle for the first time by both WHO and UNICEF. And I've been leading this program at WHO for the last 13 years, I think it's coming up to. And WHO is co-custodian of 6A and 6B, and that's the little green box that you see in the middle, which are basically the means of implementation that cut across all targets and indicators for SDG 6. So as most of you know, the JMP has reported country, regional and global estimates of progress on drinking water and sanitation and hygiene since the 90s. And the JMP maintains an extensive global database and has become the leading source of comparable estimates of progress at national, regional, and global levels, using available and existing data at country level, and provides, as I said, comparable progress on outcomes for WASH in households, WASH in healthcare facilities, but also WASH in schools. GLAAS, on the other hand, monitors inputs and processes and outputs. And basically, GLAAS monitors the elements of WASH systems and the enabling environment since its pilot back in 2008, and has included over 100 participating countries over the last couple of cycles. And all GLAAS results are national data that are reported and validated by government themselves. And just for those of you that may be less familiar with the GLAAS monitoring, it really focuses on governments monitoring human resources and finance, but is evolving to address other topics such as climate and gender. And just to last point on this, GLAAS is more than just the data at global level. It's the process itself that's really critical at country level. And really to say that GLAAS at country level is led by government with support from partners. Next slide, please. So moving on to the next slide is, so how is the world doing on WASH services? What's the progress? Where are we at? So between the year 2000 and 2024, I mean, the global population rose by 2 billion. It went from 6.2 to 8.2 billion, but more than 2.2 billion gained access to safely managed drinking water and 2.8 billion to safely managed sanitation. And so just to say, and to start off positively, this is a significant achievement that the WASH sector has stayed ahead of a very substantial global population growth. But that doesn't mean that we're going to reach the targets. The progress that has been achieved has been uneven. And if we are going to reach SDG 6 in the next 5 years on water and sanitation, significant acceleration is needed. And the number of people being left behind are still too many. So according to the latest JMP 2025 report that was launched last August in 2025, the world remains dramatically off track to reach particularly SDG 6.2. Yet, some countries have successfully and rapidly increased coverage of sanitation services. So this leads me to the question, what are the factors that lead some countries to make rapid progress towards increasing access to sanitation services and others not? The main takeaway is that we're progressing, but not fast enough. And we have seen the least progress among those marginalized populations, those in vulnerable situations, the elderly, people with disability in hard to reach areas. And these data show more intentional efforts are required if we want to have a real impact on inequities. Next slide, please. Now, this next slide is really to show you, and you can click. This is just to show you what the JMPE data can tell us, the power of data. And really, these graphs are to make the point that there are data out there. And these are really there for us to be able to take action, for decision makers to take action. And the point here is really that national estimates are now available for safely managed drinking water from 160 countries around the world. I'll say that again. National estimates are now available for safely managed drinking water from 160 countries. And that represents 72% of the global population compared to just 95 countries at the start of the SDG period. New estimates from 19 countries became available for the latest report, most notably from India, but also from Egypt and from South Africa. Estimates are now available for safely managed sanitation from 145 countries that represent 86% of the global population. And for the latest report, we got new estimates from 13 countries, including Afghanistan, whose population totals over 40 million people. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? What are the global challenges for SDG 6.1 and 6.2? I won't go through all of these in details, but there are governance and wash systems are not fully fit for purpose. Budget are inefficient to achieve equity and to reach those that need it most. I think we all recognize that we're living in a challenging landscape globally over the last few years, whether it's climate change, security, political situations that are out of our control. National targets sometimes are often inconsistent, and current monitoring leaves gaps. But there's also institutional fragmentation, and there's also a lack of capacity that needs building, human resources that need putting in place, particularly in certain areas. And this is where we try and sort of locate and highlight where the gaps are through the GLAAS survey. There's accelerating issues around climate change. There's also natural disasters that we have to deal with, as well as I mentioned, in a political and unstable world that we're living in, as well as increasing public health emergencies. I think we all know that currently there are many countries that are suffering from some Ebola outbreaks, but there's other outbreaks, cholera outbreaks happening. So this is where I come back to data, the importance of having data, knowing where to target resources, knowing how much is being spent in certain areas versus others, and therefore taking it back to the means of implementation for SDG 6A and 6B and the GLAAS data. And what you can see here are some of the results of the latest GLAAS report that was published at the end of last year and launched in Dakar, in Senegal, at the UN Water Preparatory Conference that took place in January. I think this is just to really emphasize the power of data. And on the next slide, this is another, I think, significant table where we show that most countries actually report having policies and plans in place. There are measures to extend wash services to people living in poverty for drinking water and sanitation. But actually, when you go to the next column, you see that few have sufficient human and and financial resources to implement them. So it's all good having everything in plans and policies and having measures in place, but if you cannot monitor them and you cannot fund them, we're not going to be able to reach those that need it most. And therefore, financial monitoring and targeted financial measures lag far behind, especially for those living in poverty. And the implementation gap spans all wash services and affects most income groups. Next slide, please. And who do these inequities impact? So I think just to give you a couple of examples here is that more than 1 billion people are served by health facilities without even basic water. Now, let me just let that sink in. No basic water in healthcare facilities. That is just unacceptable. 3/4 of African women are giving birth in a healthcare facility that lacks even basic wash services. Nearly 500 million children go to school without basic drinking water. And 70% of women, girls over 15 years of age have primary responsibilities for fetching water, with associated risks of gender-based violence, disrupted education, reduced economic participation, and ill health or injury. And what you can see actually in the graph above is basically that women and girls are spending more than 30 minutes a day fetching water, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa and Central and Southern Asia. And that, of course, has a huge impact on the economy, on health, on productivity, and beyond. If you click again, this is just to show what the data and the disaggregated data that we collect through the GLAAS survey, thanks to countries participating in the GLAAS survey, give us a better idea of the measures in policies or plans that to extend sanitation services to those most at risk and those that are being left behind. But it also shows that these are not being monitored or allocated resources on a regular basis. So how can we make, next slide, please, how can we make a difference and achieve scale and impact by 2030? But 2030 is not the end. There's still quite a few years ahead. And so we need to think about beyond. How do we set the scene? We cannot let these efforts that we are making, go weaker. We need to strengthen. So given not what we know now, thanks to all these data, and that we know that, many countries are not going to reach SDGs on water sanitation and hygiene, what can we do? I mean, as you all know, this is a really important year. The UN Water 26 conference in December at the end of this year. WHO and UNICEF are engaged and co-conveners for the interactive dialogue on water for people. And we're focusing on what these new data and global developments can tell us on how we can collectively, we should prioritize to have the biggest impact and reach scale. Some flagship initiatives are being proposed across these interactive dialogues, not just the one on water for people, but the 6 interactive dialogues. And it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about strengthening existing monitoring and national information systems already in place to ensure that data are being used for decision making that can in turn feed into national review mechanisms, regional and global monitoring and reporting, such as the GLAAS and JMP. There is less money around. We need to work more closely together. We need to have strong government systems and national leadership in place, aligning core indicators, reinforcing shared priorities, ensuring that we collectively make a difference through the upcoming launch, for example, of the SDG 6 report that will be launched at the HLPF in New York in a month's time, actually exactly in a month's time, and that we collectively make commitments and stick to these for the UN Water Conference 2026 in Abu Dhabi in December. And that's not just this year, but take these beyond so that we can build a strong basis for a post-2030 agenda where water can be an integral part of the discussions beyond 2030. And I really look forward to hearing from Susie and Dauda, who are on today's webinar, having their perspectives from a country level. And with that, I'll stop there. I hope I haven't gone too much over time, but thank you very much. And back over to you, Muti. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Actually, I was like, please don't keep going, keep going. This is so much information. And you could see that there were a lot of comments in the chat. And for those who want access to the presentations and the data, don't worry, we got you covered. Yeah, actually, these presentations will be shared on the RWSN website. So if you check in the chat, not the Q&A, in the chat, you'll notice there's Batima and Aline from the Secretariat of RWSN. They are responding to some of those questions. So these slides will be shared. But also we have Betsy, who is supporting us as well. It's a colleague of Fiona's, who's also responding to some of your GLAAS specific questions, and she's also providing some information there. So like I said, we've got you covered. So that was Fiona. I would like to call upon my brother from another mother to take us into the next part of the session, which is to introduce and bring on the other speakers and to lead a little moderation about what we just saw, the GLAAS and JMP report and some of the highlights from that particular report. So over to you, Mutala, in this next part of the webinar.
Thanks so much, Muti. Thanks very much, Fiona. That's been a very lovely presentation and a lot to reflect about. And what is exciting to me is that it's clear that the data that we have from GLAAS shouldn't be seen as UN data, but it's normally national data, country-led, collected at the country level, validated and made available. And from country to country, we are able to do an easy peer-to-peer review or comparison, and which is very useful. And we'll be hearing from specific speakers from Ghana and Sierra Leone. But beyond that, what is also clear is that, can we imagine a global effort to deliver WASH without data? So the data that Fiona shared gives us a very good picture on the journey we have undertaken and how far we have come as a globe. And a lot is yet to be done. It's very alarming to see the facts around WASH inequalities. And it's very true that some countries are doing very well, but even within countries, we have some gaps that needs to be addressed. And we'll hear from our speakers as well in this regard. And so the idea of leaving no one behind is really something we must look at. So at this point, I just want us to have a quick reflection from our panelists. And I want to start with Susie, just to look at what the findings mean to you as your national WASH systems are put in place, and the reflection as to how these affect decision-making, your quick reflections from Fiona's presentation. Thank you, and over to you, Susie.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you, Fiona, for that presentation. This result is actually no surprise to us. I mean, the results reflect what is really happening at the country level, especially with regards to the fact that we have the policies, we have the plans. Implementation has always been a challenge and needs to be improved. And again, I'm talking about a hard to serve, just to make sure that everyone is covered by 2030, like our targets say. And so Ghana, for example, is making conscious efforts. We are being intentional about identifying where they are, who they are, in order to be able to design strategies to serve them. So it is no surprise to me the results that Fiona presented. And Ghana intends to use the data, to try and use the data to shape the decisions that we make in the sector. Thank you, Enoba. Back to you, Mut.
Thanks very much. Kamara, our brother from Sierra Leone, quick reflections from you. What's your take on Fiona's presentation, and how does that link to what you are doing in Sierra Leone?
Thank you so much, and Mutala. Yes, because it serves as an eye-opener for for us, Sierra Leone, for us to ensure that we work on these gaps that had already been identified during GLAAS, and then collectively work on how to address the WASH challenges as we move forward, because it's not a one-size approach that we should use. We must ensure collaboration, transparency, and accountability so that we can be able to address most of these gaps and then be able to meet our WASH SDG 6 target on or before 2030.
Thank you very much, Dauda. So it's clear that the work the UN is leading when it comes to GLAAS and GMP is very useful, and as much as possible is a reliable source of data that can help us in decision-making, allocation of resources, and delivery of WASH services to everyone, everywhere. At this point, I want to introduce Susie, who will be our next presenter, to give us some details from the Ghana case study. And Susie Abedu is a WASH professional with almost 2 decades of professional work when it comes to WASH. He has moved from the then Ministry of Works and Housing and Water Resources, which was later made Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, and now back to a Ministry of Works and Housing and Water Resources. He's done a lot of work in the area of WASH. He's worked with a lot of partners, and he has a master's in governance and sustainable development. And so it's not surprising at all that Susie is someone who believes in building systems and ensuring that projects are able to make the needed impact and ensure sustainability beyond project lifespan. She's been a lead in a lot of national initiatives, which includes the GLAAS country surveys, WASH accounts, and currently leading a process for the 5th round of Ghana's WASH accounts process, and also someone leading the rollout of water safety planning within the sector. Her work has occasionally brought her into contact with private sector, NGOs, international partners, and a lot has been achieved due to her leadership and support within the sector. And so, for us, we are introducing to you Susie to present the case for Ghana. So over to you, Susie.
Thank you, Mutala. That was very nice. Your introduction was very nice, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving Ghana the opportunity to share its journey towards the SDG 6 targets. 4 years to 2030. 2030 is fast approaching. Fiona mentioned that we have 5 years to go, but I count it as 4 years. So it's fast approaching, and the only way to turn these ambitions that we have to positive results is to let data lead. So this presentation will show how evidence is shaping the decisions and driving some changes in Ghana. What would it take? The foundation is strong, but the gaps still remain. And so it is important that we move from generating just the data to translating it into actions, and then picking the lessons learned and letting those lessons drive the commitments ahead, while seizing the opportunity to maximize the value of sector data and the way forward. So that will be the outline of my presentation, where I will talk about the foundation, focusing on some of the targets we have set, the data ecosystem in Ghana, and some achievements made. And then I would follow it up with some use of data and what has happened, the change that we have experienced, and follow it up with some lessons that we have learned, and then finally conclude with the opportunities that we can seize to maximize the value of sector data and the way forward. Next slide. So let's set the context. 31% of the population in Ghana are without safely managed drinking water, whilst 81% are without safely managed sanitation. unsafe wash is not just a figure, it costs life, with about 7,600 deaths in 2019. And so without reliable wash data, it is practically impossible to monitor the progress that we have to make towards meeting the SDG 6. And so data becomes very reliable data, and I must stress that reliable data becomes very, very important. Next slide, please. So now that we have established the context, shall we get into some commitments that Ghana has made towards the SDG goals? The target for basic water is 96%. And that is ambitious. Ghana has made some ambitious, set some ambitious targets. Basic water is 96%. There's universal access to sanitation and hygiene. And but as at 2024, 90% of the population had access to basic water services. And then safely managed is far behind, 43%. Sanitation and hygiene are the biggest challenge, with sanitation, basic sanitation standing at 32%, safely managed at 19%, and open defecation at 18%, as against the target of eradicating open defecation completely. Hygiene services, the 2024 achievement is 45% for basic services. And so the gaps are clear. It just tells us that basic water services is close to target, whilst sanitation and hygiene and even safely managed water services need some major push. Next slide. And so I would like to share with you the wash data ecosystem in Ghana so that you just know how data flows into the sector. So data flows to the sector by collecting through household surveys like the Ghana Living Standards Surveys, censuses, and also through administrative systems. So we have that of education, the education sector being the Education Management Information System, coming from the District Health Management Information System, and also some digital inspections and sometimes targeted studies and global reporting. And all of this feed into a sector system. Then they are analyzed to reveal some gaps, to reveal the risk and the trends. And then a decision is made that should guide, or that guides budgeting, guides the targeting and enforcement. And then finally, there is verification to ensure, one, that the services are functioning, and also that equity issues are being addressed. The goal is that Ghana would have a single sector information system that helps leaders to answer questions relating to where is the gap, who is affected, and what is changing. Next slide. That said, I would like to zoom into how we have used the wash data to drive some change, some real change. In 2012, the Ghana Living Standards Survey revealed a reactive water quality management risk, so prompting an adoption to water safety planning. What happens was that the survey revealed that water quality at the point of use was needed to be improved, and that the management of drinking water quality was too reactive, focusing on endpoint testing only. And so we had to adapt the risk-based approach to managing drinking water, which is the water safety plan. And so Ghana started the process of rolling this out and mainstreaming it to national programming. We've also used the wash account. It has enabled us to monitor sector progress, tracking the national and international commitments under the Ngor and Itiquini. So now we know where we stand with Ngor and Itiquini, the 0.5% of GDP to sanitation and 5% to wash. Now we know, people are becoming aware, because wash account has revealed that. It has also enabled, the wash account has also enabled us to know the gaps in sector finance. So we know how much more we need to spend in order to reach our targets. Now, there was also, between 2012 and 2016, a mapping of open defecation district. And it identified that there were 15 high burdened regions. So that triggered CLTS rule that helped to certify 4,800 plus communities as ODF. So that is data that has moved into action. Next slide. And then on one of our learning platforms, it was a study was shared that showed that it was unsustainable and practically impossible to serve the hard to reach communities or hard to serve communities if we don't make the intentions to do that. And with that, the sector stakeholders at that forum agreed that we become intentional about identifying them and designing strategies to serve them. So we have started with defining a criteria to really identify who they are, where they are, and how to serve them. So that is also data that has moved into action. Then there was a UNC World Vision study that found that with GOG, Government of Ghana, that found that there was lead in drinking water, and that was from the plumbing parts. So it has prompted, after a lot of consultations and discussions with stakeholders, it has prompted the Ghana Standards Authority and stakeholders to begin certain standards for lead in plumbing parts. And so on, I can give a number of examples. There's also a national school watch census that was undertaken in 2018. And it documented that 60% of schools lacked basic sanitation. And that triggered infrastructure grants to 1,200 schools to improve upon sanitation services in schools. So that is evidence in action. Next slide. So any data set must tell a story. So the story will be identifying the risk, making the decision, and triggering the change, or the change that is going to be achieved, or the change that is achieved. And so from water safety planning to CLTS, we have seen how data has actually, or evidence has actually driven some progress. And so we are able to tell that there is more to do in terms of ensuring that we are not only focusing on expanding access, but we are also looking at quality of service as well. Next slide. But this is how far the data has brought us. But it has also taught us some lessons. Lessons in terms of what worked, what doesn't work, and what needs improvement. And so for one of the lessons that we have learned in the use of Ghana's WASH data, and I'll focus on the WASH accounts. The fact that you have these WASH results do not necessarily or automatically mean that some agencies would use it for planning. Intentionally, you would have to engage them to understand what it means so that they can use it for planning. So even though for the WASH accounts, we always engage these sectors and these stakeholders that we know would benefit from that we think would benefit from the WASH account results to be part of the process right from the beginning to the end. However, when it comes to budgeting, somehow the results fall through. And so we are making efforts to actually facilitate and support the effective use of the data to inform decisions. We've already started engaging them to find out what exactly is the bottleneck so that we can design the results in such a way that will be useful and they will see it as friendly to use. Again, the other lesson is that WASH data is collected by a number of institutions, and so it is so fragmented. Sometimes it brings about inconsistency. So you'd have one agency throwing some data sets and another agency throwing another one, completely different. And so we have learned that we have to strengthen WASH data coordination to ensure that the evidence that we are generating are reliable for planning and resource allocation. Tracking methodology. The tracking methodology requires that the data be disaggregated in a particular way so that you'll be able to ensure equity and inclusiveness. And that is very key in making decisions. So we have learned that we need to strengthen that data disaggregation. We are engaging with stakeholders to find out whether what what will it take to actually disaggregate, because sometimes it's difficult for them to really do that. Now, what has been the process for wash account development, for example, is to engage the consultant to support the ministry, which is okay, but I think we are over-relying on consultant, and you all know what is happening on the international funding landscape. So we have to somehow limit the use of national consultant in this. And so we have learned that we have to institutionalize the process by mainstreaming some of the indicators in our main M&E system so that we can sustain the process, even beyond support from WHO, UNICEF, or WaterAid. We'll be able to still do that. Then the fact that we should see evidence as a routine part of decision-making and not just an occasional input, so that when you need this information, you do a small study, and once you use that information or data, then that settles it, that's it. No, I mean, it should be part of our routine decision-making. So we institutionalize evidence use through proper and stronger systems, which should also be supported by a dedicated funding, because it's all about funding, so that we have a very strong foundation for institutionalizing the evidence. So the lessons are being addressed. Maybe I should make this point, that the lessons are being addressed collaboratively with institutions. And this highlights Ghana's readiness to work with development partners on all the commitments. Next slide, please. Yeah, we have learned some lessons, but there are also some opportunities that can be seized to maximize the value of WASH data. One is that Ghana now has a WASH compact, and in the WASH compact, we've made certain commitments. One is that we spend $1.7 billion annually on WASH services. And that aligns with the Heads of State initiative for accountability and resource mobilization. And how else can we monitor this compact unless we know exactly how much we spend? And so the WASH account is an opportunity, to use the data that we have generated. The Ghana WASH compact commitments that we have made in terms of tracking it. There's an opportunity to use the data. Apart from that, WASH account also has provided us with the evidence to identify the funding gaps that are needed to reach the targets. So for example, in Ghana, we have identified that we need a little bit, almost $500 million every year to fill in the gaps, and where to allocate these resources. And that greater investment should go into IWRM, Integrated Water Resources Management, sanitation, and hygiene. So that is also an opportunity. The third one is that the Ministry of Finance announced that, gave a directive that 20% of all district assembly common fund should be spent on WASH at the district level. And so this provides an opportunity to use the data to guide effective utilization. So the plan is to engage relevant agencies to ensure that in terms of the utilization of that 20%, there's equity and that we are able to account for resource application. Ghana already leverages on GLAAS, WASH account, and JMP, but we need to strengthen their use, because it will better benchmark process and attract donor support and enhance transparency. Next slide, please. So what do we need to do? Having known the opportunities, it is important that we are clear on how stakeholders can seize those opportunities to maximize the value of WASH data. So government should create and sustain a functioning real-time national WASH data platform to ensure that there's coordinated evidence sharing, and there's stronger accountability, and faster decision-making. Development partners should also support investment in enhancing and maintaining real-time national WASH data, and also assist in harmonizing the donor M&E frameworks with the government systems to reduce duplication. Now, NGOs and CSOs after the enabling environment has been created by government, should integrate community-level data into national repositories and champion the disaggregation of data for especially marginalized groups, so that you have the local evidence feeding into the national monitoring and reporting system. Then researchers and academia must translate the WASH data gaps into clear research agenda, and support the training of students and practitioners on effective data management, and also actively advocate for the evidence to be used in decision making. Next slide. So the call to action is to turn every WASH indicator into decision relating to who acts, what changes, where the changes should take place. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Susie. Very insightful presentation. And the Ghana story, we have a lot of lessons to learn from it. It is indeed very clear that data alone in itself is and there will be a session where we can try to address some of the concerns or questions that colleagues have raised. So I just wanted to delve into the next presentation, which is coming from our brother from Sierra Leone, and to say that Dauda Kamara is a WASH and public health specialist working with the government of Sierra Leone and with specialty in monitoring, evaluation, quality improvement, and health system strengthening. And he comes roles within the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, and also the Health Ministry of Sierra Leone. He's worked extensively with organizations like Oxfam GB, the Aid Salon, the MSF Belgium, and has contributed a lot in terms of operational research and data-driven planning to support progress towards SDG 6. And beyond working on WASH, he's very much interested in sports. And we have the privilege of having Dauda Kamara to share an insightful and good case from the Sierra Leone. And over to you, Kamara. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Mutala, for that fascinating introduction. As Mutala rightly said, I have been within the WASH and health space for quite some time, and I'm humble and honored to be one of the speakers during this particular webinar series. And we all can affirm that when it comes to data, we actually need evidence. We all trust or believe in God, but when it comes to data, we need an actual evidence to substantiate what exactly we are saying and what are the necessary actions that should be taken by policymakers, decision makers, by financial analysts, and all the rest. So today I'll be taking you through the Sierra Leone's experience using WASH data system towards SDG 6 action. Next. So WASH is a national development priority in Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone is being faced with urbanization. WASH access has improved, but there are significant WASH challenges that are still existing when it comes to access to safely manage. When it comes to the population without access to safely managed water, it is at 37.6%. When it comes to the population without access to safely managed sanitation services, it is at 86%. And when it comes to the population of Sierra Leoneans that are without access to basic hygiene services, it is at 88%. And then the open defecation rate is appalling. It's actually high. It is at 25%. So when we are considering the wash cycle, we can see that we are on track when it comes to safely manage water as compared to sanitation and hygiene services. And then also Sierra Leone is also prone to climatic shocks, flooding, mudslide, as we experienced in 2019, 2020. Next. So we have gone through multiple or several arrangements when it comes to the wash. Before 2024, we used to have Ministry of Health and Sanitation. And then when His Excellency, the President, got his second mandate in 2023-2024, he decided to detach the sanitation portfolio from the Ministry of Health and transferred it over to the Ministry of Water Resources, so that holistic wash service delivery can be delivered to the people of Sierra Leone. So when that was done, the several climate-informed wash bottleneck analysis was conducted in order for us to know where the wash issues, the challenges and gaps, and then what are the possible opportunities. And then the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation and other wash development partners brought together the wash compact. And within that wash compact, that led us to the development of the National Wash Sector Development Program that will span between 2025 to 2035. So for now, within Sierra Leone, the wash sector vision and targets is embedded within the National Wash Sector Development Program. Next. So when it comes to water resources management, we are looking at universal access, we are looking at supply and demand management of water, and then how can we also be able to integrate climate smart strategies into all water systems infrastructure within the entire country. So that also we can also reduce when it comes to water scarcity, well, also when it comes to groundwater and river and water systems reliance, we can also reduce on those with more innovative strategies so that we can be able to accelerate access when it comes to safely managed water facilities. Next. So the sanitation and hygiene goals, we are considering this. How can we be able to end open defecation? Because that is also embedded within the National Sanitation and Hygiene Strategy. How do we eliminate open defecation using the children-wide approach towards ending open defecation? How can we ensure we move right across the sanitation ladder? How can we be able to accelerate or meet the target of 70% access to basic sanitation services? And then how can we also be able to reach 50% access to basic hygiene services? Because as it is now, we are at 12%. How can we be able to get to 50%? When it comes to access to basic sanitation services, we are at 31.4%. How can we be able to get to 70%? Next. Why wash data? Why does it matter? We actually need wash data because it supports us in terms of knowing where we are. It supports us in terms of mapping progress where we are with regards to SDG 6.1 and SDG 6.2 indicators. It's helps us in supporting planning, budgeting. It guides investments. When we have wash investment plan, we can be able to know what resources do we need, or what are the gaps? How can we be able to negotiate with other development partners so that we can be able to mobilize more investment or resources when it comes to wash? Next. So wash data has drastically shifted a lot. Before we did the WASH National Outcome Routine Mapping Survey in 2022, we had actually shifted from fragmented data collection to a more coordinated data collection system or monitoring data systems, as the case may be. So this just shows us the roadmap, how as a country, how we have been able to evolve from ad hoc or inconsistent data systems or data collection systems to actually having and now a data system that is easily accessible and then can be used. Next. So these are the various data sources for WASH that we have, but you can also see that one data source cannot answer all our questions. So it is always necessary for us to combine data sources so that we can be able to have a clear or a complete WASH picture, and then be able to identify the gaps and then see how we can be able to address these gaps by collaborating, by doing resource mobilization, by informing key decisions when it comes to WASH improvements. Next. So digital tools have actually supported us in Sierra Leone. We used to have the AvoFlow system, which had been integrated into the WASH information management system, the WASH SIMS. You can access several information. It has dashboards and everything. This is just a synopsis of what we have in Sierra Leone, because when it comes to mobile and data collection, it provides timely data, it improves the quality, and then it reduces the tendency that we have when it comes to paper-based systems, and then reliable data is actually key for informed decisions to be made. Next. So in as much as we are yearning for data for action, data for planning purposes, we need WASH data for good investment within the WASH. We are also using our WASH data in Sierra Leone for us to prioritize vulnerable or underserved districts. We have been able to use our data in Sierra Leone for us to be able to identify districts that have high open defecation situation, or districts that have high sanitation hotspots. From the cholera reports, we have also been able to identify districts that normally experience high operations and maintenance of water systems. Because within our data systems, we also observed that 42.4% of water systems broke down within the first year of construction. So that's data had been supporting us in terms of making key decisions, in terms of planning, in terms of allocating key resources, because we all know that resources are limited. So we also need to be tactful in ensuring that we use the available data for informed decisions as we move forward. We also have the WASH standards in healthcare facility guidelines, which is currently under review. Next. So I also wanted to share some success stories which we have been able to accomplish, because we also need to celebrate our accomplishments. because of this data that had been available, we have now seen better or an efficient coordination between the government ministries and that of development partners, better sector reporting, and we are now also, because of the gap that we also observe in operations and maintenance, we now have developed the community level operations and maintenance strategy that supports when it comes to O&M and O&M issues. We also have the fecal sludge management guideline. We had also piloted the series approach in Putloko district. We had also adopted the children-wide approach towards ending open defecation, and then see how we can be able to scale up the wash ladder as we move forward. And then recently, the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation also secured a wash system strengthening and projects that will support the ministry. So this was His Excellency the President that officially launched that particular project at the Bintumani International Conference Center. Next. So there are still some challenges that we are still seeing. There are differences in terms of data fragmentation. We also have some and gaps when it comes to wash and financial resources. There are also and gaps when it comes to data governance and capacity. And then sometimes we also validate most of these data that are coming from the district, that are coming from the rural areas, so that we can be able to address inconsistent reporting. Next. So how do we bridge this data to action gap? So now most of the wash development partners, they are signing the service level agreement with the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation. How can we also look at interoperability, which is also key? The AVO flow I mentioned had already been integrated with the wash ships that was developed. How can more resources be mobilized or utilized to support data governance and capacity development? How do we strengthen also data quality assurance? And then how can we also have some user-friendly dashboards in our different at national or even at sub-national levels? Next. So as Susie said, we barely have 4 years and a couple of months to go. So these are some of our key priorities for Sierra Leone. How can we also continue to strengthen wash information systems? How can we be able to also upscale digital monitoring? And also in terms of resources mobilization, how can we also continue to promote evidence-based decision-making and also strengthen accountability mechanisms? Next. So this is a call to action. Better data alone will not be able for us to be able to achieve SDG 6 or better use of data will. So I'm calling on government, development partners, and donors to continue to invest in data to action pathways so that we can be able to meet SDG 6 target or not before 2030. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dauda. On this note, it's clear that government alone cannot do it, and we need collaboration and partnership to achieve more. And congratulations to Sierra Leone for moving from an ad hoc system to a well-structured and planned monitoring system that is based on digital transformation. On this note, I want to bring in Muti for the next session, and thank you to all our panelists.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I just wanted them to keep on talking, and I can see, I think I'm too much of an optimist because I keep saying 5 years, and the speaker said, no, it's actually 4, but I'm choosing to be an optimist. So I think if the Secretariat could bring all the speakers here and spotlight them here, we're going to go into Q&A. I said we were going to end on time, and we are going to do that. So Fiona, Dauda, and Susie, great presentations, a lot to digest. And I just want to inform everyone that Most of these speakers are on LinkedIn. So if you want to get in touch, connect, and learn a bit more, the conversation can keep happening after the webinar. This is to trigger conversation. There's a lot of success. And that's one of the things I loved about the presentations. There's a lot of success we can talk about. The work in Ghana, the work in Sierra Leone. I'm really excited about digitization and national platforms and how that is all coming together. So I'm going to just shoot a couple of questions to the panel. Some questions are coming in through the chat, so I'll pick some because we only have about 13 minutes. So my first question goes to Fiona. Fiona, I wanted to just understand. I've heard, there are these animals. There's the GLAAS report that you mentioned, but I've heard wash accounts was also mentioned. Could you tell us what is the difference between these two things for those who maybe are hearing it for the first time?
Brilliant. Thanks, Muti. And thank you to Dauda and Susie for really great presentations. And I think throughout your interventions, you were answering some of the questions that were coming up in the chat. So that was just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I mean, thanks for asking that question, Muti, because I think just to avoid any confusion, I'll just take you really in the next 2 minutes back in time. But when we conducted the pilot for GLAAS back in 2008, the data for the financial section was virtually empty. Very few countries were able to even provide any kind of information. And so that's when, there was this thinking about we should develop, methodology that actually happens to be built on the national health accounts. We developed a TrackFin methodology to track financial, sources of money in the sector. And so that was developed back in 2010-11 with the World Bank and others and experts around the world. And it was piloted, actually, the TrackFin methodology at the time. We now call them wash accounts. Using the TrackFin methodology, it was actually piloted in Ghana, in Brazil, and Morocco. And now it has expanded, and countries and governments are developing wash accounts in multiple cycles. At the beginning, in the GLAAS survey, only 3 countries, in the first cycle were able to provide any kind of disaggregated financial data. With time, this has improved so much. It's just absolutely amazing. And we've now have 40 countries that have or are implementing wash accounts. Some countries like Ghana have done 4 cycles or more, and Mali as well. And that these are really, highlighting gaps. And it's really a deep dive. GLAAS is the snapshot of the financial situation. Wash accounts really allows a deep dive into, fundamental questions of how much money, total expenditure on wash is happening in the country. Who's paying for wash services? Is it households? Are they bearing the brunt of? And often we have found that households are bearing the brunt of paying for wash services. And as Susie mentioned, it's allowing us to review, make commitments under national compacts that are being developed, the Heads of State initiative, and to set the foundations for developing a simple wash finance strategy or plan at the country level. So you have the foundations for that. So, I mean, these are just fundamental information that are needed. A wash account study takes much longer and dives much deeper of all sources. So in summary, I'm going to stop there because I know we're out of time. But in summary, it's really a deep dive that allows us to get a better idea of where the money's going, where it's being spent, who has it, who, where, and how much.
And so it's about accountability of where that money is going and what it's being used for. Great. Just to let everyone know, the powers that be have told us that they'll extend a little bit past the half-hour mark because there's a lot of questions coming in. So those of you who are worried that, we're going to speed through the questions, like I said, we got your back. We're going to ask the questions that we need to ask. And Fiona, just coming to you again before I move to Susie and Dauda, particularly on the issue of the ODA, Overseas Development Assistance, that is falling. I think one of the comments in the chat, someone quite cheekily said, I think you showed a slide showing what some of the challenges are, and someone commented, everything is the same, or the only thing that's new is ODA is falling, but everything else is still the same. So the issue of funding, and especially after what you've said about the wash accounts. The issue of funding came up in the survey at the beginning. People said funding or financing for the data collection or to actually keep data updated. Funding came up in Susie's presentation. Funding also came up in Dauda's presentation. So from you, now, from your perspective, looking at this new reality we are in with regards to global funding, should countries maybe prioritize certain targets over others, given this new reality? And is this something that maybe could be a conversation at the UN Water Conference that's coming up in December? So I wanted your thoughts on that. With this new financial squeeze, what are countries to do when it comes to tracking wash data?
I'll try and be really brief. And yes, there are opportunities despite the landscape we're living in at the moment. ODA is shifting elsewhere. Of course, there is insecurity in this world at the moment. But let's be positive. I'm a positive person like you, and I do believe that we can maintain and really increase some of the attention. We need to be in there collectively, but we need to work better together. Now, Stephen in the chat mentioned, is there a lack of funding seems to be one of the primary issues. But I think we also have to recognize it's not just about, the lack of money. There's another issue, is how that money is actually used. And, the execution rates that were published by the World Bank report.
It's almost, sorry, just a quick comment. It's almost like what Dauda said about data. It's not just about having it, but it's how you use it. So
it's how you use it. It's how you spend your money.
Yeah.
And the World Bank report, estimates execution rates average between 72 and 75%. So what does that mean? It was 1/4 of allocated funds remain unspent at country level. Now, why? We need to increase, these lower absorptive capacity. And there's unspent funds, and it's driven by weak institutions or poor project management. And there's a missed opportunity there. And if we were able to spend that 1/4 of funds and execute spending it better,
I think interesting. It's almost like, sorry, just to comment, because at some point you said one of the major issues on your list was capacity in countries that needed to. So it seems like one thing feeds into the other. So you find that even if there is money, because there is inadequate capacity, they are unable to absorb that money to actually track the wash data that they need to collect and use for decision making. So it's like one problem is feeding into the other, it seems.
Yes, exactly. And we need to be addressing the human resources, the capacity. We need to be addressing the fragmentation, the institutional, the lack of leadership at national level. So I think there's a number of issues that are actually covered through the GLAAS survey that we try to highlight. And I encourage you all to have a look, because these data are very much in line from the World Bank with what we've just come out with as well in the results from the GLAAS report. And there's a lot of action that can be taken to, and as well as continuing to make noise, to make sure that water stays high on the agenda politically, that this year is an important pivotal year where a lot of decisions are going to be made, and governments need to make sure that water stays high on the agenda. And I also wanted to mention that for Interactive Dialogue A, Ghana and Switzerland are the co-chairs, and Ghana has a critical role to play. And we need to mobilize other countries to keep water high on the agenda. But I'll stop there. But I'm happy.
Ghana seems to be everywhere. It's doing, and it's got a lot of success from what I can hear. And so we will come to the countries and some of the questions that have come up. Thank you for that input, Fiona. And moving to the presentations, both Dauda and Susie, really interesting presentations. I think one thing that really came out, there were some common themes across all your presentations. I think one thing was digitization. I think that was something that came through. The issue of coordination also came through most of your presentations. So I would like to just throw I'll start with Dauda and maybe move to Susie. Dauda, the one thing I think someone in the chat has just commented to say, is it a capacity issue or political will? So I just wanted to throw a question to you. What was the trigger for your country to start taking wash data seriously in terms of collecting it, analyzing it, and using it for decision making. What was the trigger for what was the incentive for your government to actually start taking it seriously? Could you share a bit of that background? And someone has
Thank you
also,
so
as
much.
you as you answer that, someone has asked you a question saying that they're asking that Sierra Leone managed to go from ad hoc to routine monitoring, and that data from different sources are brought together. Can you just say a bit more about that? How does the ministry bring that data together? So there's a question about, you're doing a lot of bringing data together. How is that working? How's that going? So the first question for you is, what was the trigger for your government to actually start collecting data and using it? And also the question regarding, how are you doing with it about bringing data together from different sources? Over to you, Daud.
Thank you so much, Mukti. So, in relation to the wash accounts, there were significant fragmentation when it comes to financial data. The Ministry of Water Resources at that time, and then the Ministry of Health, didn't exactly know what expenditure that actually goes into wash services. Who are these services or facilities being provided to? And then when Sierra Leone did the GLAAS survey in 2021, 2022, there were also significant gaps when it comes to financial flow data. There were immense gaps when it comes to that. So that was the rationale. That was what triggered us as a country. How can we be able to understand the financial flows the financial flows associated with wash services?
So your country wanted to know, where's the money going and what is it being used for?
How much
for
resources were expended when it comes to wash services or wash facilities? Who are these services provided for? So we had that gap. And even the GLAAS survey that was done in 2021, 2022 also opined that particular gap. So that was why we got support from the World Health Organization and then Sanitation Hygiene Fund. So that was why we mapped out stakeholders, policymakers. We had a consultative meeting in Bo, and then we had a national and sub-national level training of data collectors. That was how we did the wash accounts made in cycle that's captured right from 2019 to 2021. To answer your second question, yes, we started from ad hoc, from inconsistent data, because we were over-relying on the multiple indicator cluster survey with that of the demographic health survey data. When we were putting together concept notes or proposals, so we organized WASH annual conference wherein we struggled in having WASH data. So during that particular conference,
when you say, sorry, Dauda, when you say you struggled, what do you mean? What was the struggle? What was that struggle?
Well, we struggled assessing WASH data before 2020. There were difficulties in assessing WASH data. There were inconsistent data or inconsistent reporting. So we saw that as a gap. We met annually during our WASH sector review, and then we brought that as a major challenge. And then we also decided that, how can we be able to address this? So that led for us to have or develop the WASH monitoring system guidelines, data collection tools, and then we had orientation, we had training, and then we started with the AVO flow. We got support from UNICEF and WHO and other development partners. And then we started using the WASH data and the WASH data portal system. And then when in 2022, when we did the WASH National Outcome Routine Mapping Survey, when we did the WASH norm, we later decided to integrate the overflow system into the WASH information management system, so that at least we can have a holistic digital data platform.
So in terms of the time, how long did this take from moving from this ad hoc approach to something that's a bit more I know you said you still have challenges, but to go through that whole process for your country, how long did it take?
Well, it took us more than 4 years.
4 years.
Because we were actually doing a lot of data verification, data validation. We are over relying on paper-based systems, and then it was a lot of work. So we slowly phase out from that paper-based system to the digital
into this one. Okay, fine. But it took you about 4 years to actually get to where you are, and you still need to do more. More than 4 years. Should we say 5 years? Yeah. Okay, coming to Susie. One thing about your presentation, Susie, that I found very fascinating was, and I think this was also the same in Dauda's, but I think you have a lot of successes where you've demonstrated how you've used data to actually affect decision making. And the one thing that fascinated me about your presentation is this idea of having I think you said a singular database for WASH that will work across sectors. Did I hear you correctly? Like for education, health, water, so to have one database. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds very ambitious. In terms of that particular idea, what do you think is going to be one of the major bottlenecks that you have to address to actually have that? What keeps you up at night when you think of that big idea of bringing to have one national database for WASH data that education, health, water, and any other departments use? What's the one thing that keeps you up at night to make that a reality? What is a major bottleneck for you to make that dream happen?
So if you can recall my presentation on the WASH data ecosystem, that is the architecture. So the architecture is to link to the other sectors' information system, administrative data systems. So for example, for the education sector, you would have it connected to or linked to the education management information sector that is led by the Ghana Education Service. And so would you have it linked to the district health information management system, which is actually led by the Ministry of Health, Ghana Health Service. So the challenge I face, the challenge I foresee is if their administrative data is not being updated, then we are likely to have a challenge. If we are not able to coordinate better, if we are not able to get the right indicators to be incorporated into what they collect, then that will be the challenge. And that is why we have an M&E technical working group where we meet, and they are part of the working group. So we meet to discuss these challenges and how to overcome them. Yeah, thank you.
And this is where I think you said that you are engaging those other sectors. So you're engaging them through this M&E
technical working group.
Technical working group to address those particular issues. Oh, yes. Okay, fine. So yeah, so it seems like coordination is cutting across your countries in terms of trying to bring all of this together. I think that's something that's very interesting. I think the one thing, I think the last thing I would ask, particularly with regards to the work in Ghana, because I think there was some, you emphasized at some point the need for reliable. No, actually, I'll ask this question for the both of you, because someone asked a question. And very quickly, because I've been told we've got 5 minutes. How are you using AI in your work to sort of address some of the gaps or to maybe accelerate, to help with your acceleration? Is AI part of your conversations at the moment? We'll start with Dauda and then we'll come to Susie.
Thank you, Mukti. Well, I can say that because now we are moving towards and smart wash solution. We are also looking at or climate smart solutions, as the case may be. So maybe in the not too distant future, we might be able to tap into AI in terms of wash system strengthening, as the case may be. But as of now, we are more looking at climate smart solutions when it comes to wash system strengthening. We are looking at when it comes to governance, are the governance issues being addressed? When it's the political, and then is there the political will, and then the policies, the strategies and guidelines? In terms of resources, is the resources available? In terms of monitoring, research and evaluation, and then
so you are
system
looking
strengthening as we move forward.
Yeah. So you're focusing on the system strengthening elements, and maybe AI can come. You're looking at AI maybe coming further down the line. You need to get the governance, the finance, the resourcing right. Okay, Susie, AI, is it something, a tool that Ghana is looking to integrate at any point?
Yes, maybe at some point we would try to incorporate that. But like Dauda said, my response is not different from what Dauda has said. At the moment, I don't know of any institution that's formally using AI, but maybe in the future it could be considered. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so just like Dauda, you're focusing on the system strengthening element to get that right before you integrate AI. Interesting. I see a hand from Fiona.
Maybe on
unfortunately,
this
will have to be the last comment.
The last comment on AI. Yeah. I think AI is really going to present itself as an opportunity, and it won't replace us humans, but I think it will help us identify data sources of available data sources that we may not have necessarily picked up otherwise. So I think there are opportunities, but as Susie said, we're going to have to work how we do that carefully in the future. So I see this as a very positive development, but we need to be very, very careful how we do it. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think because of time, I'll need to stop. We've kindly been given 10 more minutes, but we don't want to stretch our luck too much. So to those of you who have stayed on, thank you for staying on a little more. Thank you, Fiona, Susie, and Dauda for the fascinating presentations and the lessons learned and some of the successes, a lot of successes. And I think it's important that we emphasize that. There are a lot of successes that these countries have experienced. And I would encourage you to keep the conversation going afterwards. Dauda and Susie and Fiona are available on LinkedIn and other platforms. Link up with them, keep the conversation going, keep learning from them, because there's a lot of really cool stuff they're doing that we didn't have time to get into right now. I would invite my colleague Mutala to also be spotlighted with me. Unfortunately, we can't close with our reflection because I've got so much on my mind. But the one thing I'm excited about is there's a growing interest in using technology. I think digitization has really taken off across the countries. There's some successes. I think Fiona talked about people are moving to safely manage water and sanitation. There has been shift, but not as much to reach everybody. But the data is there, and we do have the data to actually shift this conversation forward. But challenges remain. Coordination is a big one. Really ambitious ideas in Ghana and Sierra Leone, but challenges around coordination and financing remain. So to my brother from another mother, Mutala, any final thoughts or reflections from this webinar before we close?
Yes, thank you very much, Muti. Thank you for a good session, input from our panelists, and thank you for all the audience. Just to say that it is indeed a very interesting session that we have had. This will not end here. A lot needs to be done at the country level, beyond Ghana and Sierra Leone. If any country wants to do something similar, we are interested and we want that kind of partnership. It's not enough to always have the data. The data is supposed to help us take actions, take decisions, and together we can achieve SDG 6 moving forward. It's not late. A lot can still be done. 4 to 5 years, some decisions can be made, some improvements can be achieved. And the issue around lead, it hit me. To what extent are other countries thinking about this? Plumbing materials that are supposed to solve problems are rather becoming a problem in itself. And so data is key. Let's get the evidence and let's act on it. And so at this point, I also want to say a big thank you and over to the Secretariat if they have anything to share before we close.
I think I'll just very quickly, something you said that's really important, Mutala. I want to latch on that, and that's the issue of lead, because the next webinar is Stop the Rot, which is actually about the quality of parts and things of that, and things to do with hand pump parts. So if you are interested in the subject about the quality of spare parts for hand pumps across Africa, then the next webinar, Stop the Rot, Making Connections to Improve Infrastructure Quality on the 30th of June is still on the program. So we still have other webinars coming, and we do also have recordings of previous webinars that have taken place. And for those who are interested in AI, we also had a webinar, I believe it was last year, about AI with regards to data. So if you're interested, please check out our repository of recordings to see that particular webinar about AI. So I think, yes, the Secretariat, if there's anything you would want to add. Going once.
Just remember to complete our survey, please. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. That is the wonderful Aline and Batima in the background doing what they do best, keeping this ship moving. So please, you will get a survey. Fill it out. It helps us do our job better and learn how, and so that we can do our job better for you, because we are the data guys and we need data to make decisions. So we live by our word and our title. So on that note, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the session. But like I said, keep the conversation going. And from RWSN, myself and Mutala, the Data for Action thematic group, thank you for a great webinar, and I hope you learned something. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.